So, in the discussion that we were having, we were speaking about the Midianites being slaughtered, and this is in Numbers 31, verse 1 through 18, where God commands Moses to slaughter the Midianites, all the men, the women, the young boys, but to keep the young virgin girls alive for themselves. Now, I start speaking to him about how I don't view this as moral. And if God were all wise, all knowing, all powerful, wouldn't it be possible that this God, whose morality is objective and he never changes, explained to the Israelites how to help the Midianites change from their ways and become different, and so that they can live in harmony? No, the all wise, all knowing, all powerful creator of the universe finds it just and moral, and essentially the best solution is to go about this situation killing and letting them keep the virgin girls for themselves, which ultimately will be raped and will be coerced. Now, he argued that, well, they were taken care of. Who cares if they're taken care of? They would have been taken care of by their own people. They were fine. And then he says, oh, well, at least they married them. They didn't rape them. They had no choice. They had no say in the matter. They were coerced into marriage. They had to marry. It wasn't something that they necessarily did because they fell in love with the men who beheaded their father. And not all of them were married and went off to. A ton of them just became concubines, right? So secondary wives, essentially utilized for sexual pleasure. So, if you will, the sex toys. And this is what the all wise, all knowing, all powerful, objectively moral creator decides is the best solution to this problem. And so then he responds with this right here. He responds with, and yet you're the one over here sucking off Donald Trump when he invaded Venezuelans and kills 100 innocent men. And I was responding to something that I previously said. I said, behold, objective morality, objective and true. He sent this in between both the messages. And then he's saying, doing 360 spins on it, which he is there referring to the president's genitalia. Now, when looking at a response like this, first of all, it has nothing to do with the actual topic at hand. We were speaking about the Midianites and them being slaughtered, which in the Bible, that is the understanding of what happened. But then he points it and almost commits, I believe it's ad hominem fallacy, where he says, well, you're supporting Donald Trump, who has killed 100 innocent people. Now, whether or not that be true, let's just say it is. I think 100 people is way different than more than 50,000 innocent young boys and girls being put into terrible predicaments, whether either being murdered or coerced into being raped. So, even if it is true, it still does not hold water to the atrocity of Numbers 31, 1 through 18. And what can we see here with this type of response, right? With a response that someone starts trying to personally attack you, and the attacks might not even be true, but even if they are, they're just not relevant. So what can we say, especially in the context of this conversation? What is this individual going through, or who is this individual? Well, the individual seems to be clearly very prone to anger and frustration when confronted with opposing views that attack not only his beliefs, but his identity. You see, it's not really just a belief anymore for this individual. This person now identifies with this belief. Now, where can you possibly see the difference in between those two things? Well, in one way, you can see how they react whenever you oppose them, as evidenced here. Another way could be that everything else that they do in their life is influenced by that belief. And of course, beliefs don't live in a vacuum. Every single belief we have does inevitably affect us. But an example for this would be if I'm a vegan and I see some people eating at a restaurant while I'm walking by, and I walk in and I yell at them and I get mad at them, right? I'm very intertwined with this belief. Everything I do, any opportunity, however I am, my being, it makes up most of it. So then it's an attack on my ego, right? My identity, who I am, when someone opposes my views. And it only becomes a problem when I cannot defend my views any longer. So who's making me feel this uneasiness? Well, in this example, it's yours truly. And I'm making this person, because they also are easily provoked. They're also easily provoked. I am the reason for why they're feeling this way. And so when they get upset and they want to lash out on something or someone, who is the one causing this feeling of uncomfortableness, right? Who's causing this uncomfortability? Well, that'd be me. So then therefore now I'm the one to take the brunt of these insults. And no, it doesn't get to me. And no, I don't find it amusing, although I used to before. What I do now see is someone that definitely needs to learn more, read more, and be all right with being wrong. Because when you can't answer questions and you resort to ad hominems, it's not really that you lost. You still could be right, but you don't understand what you're even believing in to the full extent where you can answer these difficult questions, especially when you fall out to the cop out that God, his understanding is much higher than mine, therefore I cannot answer that. Well, that's a cop out, because if that's where the case, then how can you, with your limited mind, even understand that he's the right God to follow, or how to get into heaven, or why would the stories in the Bible be there if it were not there for you to understand? It's just a complete cop out. It's a non answer, and it's a way that a lot of believers choose to follow so that they don't actually have to answer the difficult questions when they can, because they do know the answer. They just do not want to answer that answer, for they feel as if though it's a sin. So this is one of my reviews of one of the conversations I had with a believer, and we covered how the context of the conversation led to an ad hominem, and we broke down that ad hominem, and we broke down a little bit of that individual and the type of way they are. So next time you speak to a Christian or a theologian and they're giving you an ad hominem, consider not taking it personally. Consider where they might be coming from and why they're doing that, and stop looking at the action, but the source of where that action comes from. And more likely than not, you will find an individual who, for a moment there, was suffering of some cognitive dissonance, and they are now having a moment where, for a split second, they realized that you actually had more reason than they did.